And welcome back to Ball Don't Lie. We told you this past Friday to keep an eye out for a bit of a Selection Sunday special, and here we are. Following up on our word, I'm Spencer Ball. He's JP Barry, and Selection Sunday is typically a good time for the average college basketball fan. You get to see who fills out the field of one of the most exciting times of the year. And JP, we're going to talk a little bit about the last four teams in and the first four teams out. I'm going to let you lead us there.
Well, the committee did such an interesting job this year because the last four teams in, you got Virginia, Colorado State, Boise State, and Colorado. Two of those teams, Boise State and Colorado State, seemed like they were solidly in the tournament field. Meanwhile, you got teams like Michigan State, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, who are TCU, who are single digits, Texas, who are single-digit seeds, FAU, who made the dance without any kind of sweat at all, it seems, who had significantly worse resumes than the last four teams in, and then those teams had worse resumes than the last four out. The last four out were the Oklahoma Sooners, who played in one of the toughest leagues in America, although their non-conference strength of schedule was rather poor, and they fell off a little bit down the stretch.
Yeah, Mississippi Valley State is not considered a quality win if you are concerned. They went 1-30. Yeah. And both them and TCU just kind of licked their lips on that one, and they played half the Big 12 and took it on the chin. So.
Yeah, and then the second team out was the Seton Hall University Pirates. In the 45-year history of the Big East Conference, a team had never finished 5 or more games above 500 in conference play and missed the big dance. That was until today, when the 13-7 fourth place in the Big East Seton Hall Pirates were left out of the field. Now, the 5th and 6th place teams, St. John's and Providence was 7th, didn't make the field either. The league, one of the best leagues in the entire country, second in the country in terms of KenPom ratings for conferences. They had 3 teams in the field. The last time the Big East had this few bids to the NCAA tournament was 1993, when Syracuse was on probation, as well as a lot of other teams being down in the conference. It just makes no sense. Then you have Indiana State, who now has the highest net rating in the history of college basketball, to not make it to the tournament. And they
ranked in the 20s and not making a
field
in the
AP poll
of 68 is very, very tough.
Then you have Pitt, who was number 4 in the ACC and made it to the ACC semifinals for the first time since joining the conference. Played North Carolina very tough in that semifinals appearance with Blake Hinson, Ishmael Leggett, and Carlton Carrington having great seasons for Pitt. And it was not all for nothing, but they're not playing in the NIT, they already announced. So it really was all for nothing, because they decided that 19-14 Michigan State and 20-14 Texas A&M were more deserving. It makes no sense. St. John's and Providence not even being in the last four out first four out is insanity. To me, St. John's had one of the best resumes in the country. I think they were, they're now the second highest net to never make it into the dance, behind Indiana State. Providence had a great year after their best player had an ACL tear back in December. And so it's just a tragedy, I think.
Yeah, there are definitely some surprising teams that made the list. We've talked about a few, but Virginia, to me, was surprising, making it over a fellow ACC team like Pitt. That one feels a bit interesting, especially when you look at some of their losses. Getting just smoked by Notre Dame is not a great look.
Getting smoked by Notre Dame, losing by 34 to Virginia Tech. Then they lost. They lost big.
And
they
Pitt
lost
was trending
to Pitt
much higher towards the end of the season, just playing much better. A very surprising decision.
They had a road win against Duke. It's just...
Yeah, and just something I'll do quickly before we get into, our picks for the bracket, which is, the meat and potatoes of this show.
What are you really here for?
Just a Power 5 conference breakdown of all the teams that got into. There were 8 Big 12 and SEC teams, which I think is pretty interesting. I don't think all of those teams were deserving, but we'll get into that whenever we
more so the SEC
in.
than the Big 12. I think the Big 12 was really good this year, but
some of those bottom teams like TCU as well as Texas, I think, is kind of questionable. Oklahoma, I don't think deserved to be in just because they really... I don't think
they should have been first 4 out.
Yeah, I agree. But again, some of the SEC teams are questionable. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, not even being in the play-in, and not even in the first or the last 4 in. But just getting like 8 and 9 seeds kind of just just for the sake of them being in. I don't know. It felt a little weird to me. But the ACC and the Pac-12 each had 5 teams, and the Big Ten had 6 teams. And just an interesting breakdown this year, but I think what me and JP are going to do for this show is, well, first we're going to start with our first 4 games, and then after that we're going to go region by region, give you our picks, and, you could laugh at us, come back to this.
Either age really well or really poorly.
Like milk or wine. And
like Spencer picking Tennessee to win the SEC tournament, or me picking NC State. I picked Florida to win the SEC tournament.
That's right. I picked Kentucky.
Oh, Kentucky. Sorry.
Well, because you did the old bait and switch.
I did bait and switch. Age really well, like picking NC State to win 5 games in 5 days.
Leave it to the Heels to just absolutely not show up for a rivalry game, and for NC State to shoot the lights out. Hey, it's classic for all the Tar Heel fans out there. You've seen this movie plenty of times before, but without further ado, let's get started with the first 4 taking place in Dayton. When is that? Tuesday and Wednesday?
Yep.
Howard and Wagner. JP, who you got in this heated battle of the 16 seeds?
Well, Howard has a player. I think his name is Seth Jones, who's in his 8th year of college basketball due to injuries and stuff like that. A fun story there. But Wagner's a team that has been hot to end the season. Their head coach is a former Seton Hall Pirate. So I'm going to go ahead and Sharpie in the Wagner Eagles.
And apparently Wagner hasn't been to the dance, I believe, since 2003, if I was hearing that correctly. Of course, doing our research right before this. I'm going to take Howard. They're playing pretty well right now. Won the conference tournament as a 4 seed, so definitely playing up the form. Moving on, we've got a battle of the 10 seeds. Virginia versus Colorado State. For me, JP, this one's pretty easy. I'm taking the Rams. I agree. I think they should have been in the tourney as not one of the last 4 teams in. And I think Virginia is a little fraudulent, and especially if they have a bad shooting day, they might just put up like 39 points and lose. So I'm going to take the Rams here.
I'm going to flip the script. This is a clash of styles. Colorado State's very fast-paced, offensively oriented. And when a team like that doesn't quite have the talent of a high major program runs into something like Virginia that's going to slow the game down and play physical defense, it typically doesn't go well. Colorado State's guards are going to have their hands full with Reese Beekman and Ryan Dunn, both on offense and defense. And I just think that they're just not going to be able to hang with Virginia's talent level. I think the Hoos get it done, even though, like I said, I think Virginia maybe shouldn't have even made it. I just think this is a terrible matchup for Colorado State.
It could be. I'm going with the Rams. I played in a rec league team. We were Colorado State one year. So, hey, shout out the Rams. I have a jersey. That's pretty sick. Montana State versus Grambling in a battle of the 16 seeds. I'm going to go with Grambling here. The first time ever in the tournament. Hey, they looked real excited when they got their name called. That's enough for me. I don't know much about the team, but hey, the knockoff Green Bay Packers logo is moving on in my book.
I agree. This Grambling team, they're a lot of fun. It's not often you see a team from one of these HBCU conferences with a 20-win season, and they've played really well in conference play, and I think they're going to get it done.
Moving on to our first 4 in game. Or last 4 in, it's like the first 4, they're the last 4 teams. It's confusing. Boise State versus Colorado, battle of the 10 seeds. Who do you have in this one, JP?
This is another fun matchup. Boise State's a very defensively oriented team. Colorado loves the offensive end of things, and this is a Colorado team that if they get hot from beyond the arc, I think they could definitely go on a run. And I think it starts in Dayton. I think the Buffaloes are going to get it done against Boise State.
I agree with you. I saw them put up a really valiant fight in the Pac-12 title game, and they are just so offensively powerful. And I think their performance in the tournament earned them a bid in this one, clearly. I mean, they were kind of teetering on the edge, and they just did enough to get in. I think they're going to stay in at least to get into the field of 64. And moving on, we're going to, of course, start in the top left, which is the East region. UConn versus Stetson. Stetson's first ever time in the tournament. JP, I think this one is a little bit easy. I think we're both going to be taking the Huskies here.
Yeah,
unless I'm mistaken. Don't let me speak for you.
I started writing it down before you even finished the sentence. I'm taking the Huskies. We don't want to waste too much time.
Yeah, and moving on, the 8-seed Florida Atlantic team, and just to bring it up, I think this was a team that kind of got in without much contention.
Somehow. They have 4 quad 4 losses after losing to Temple in the American Conference semifinals, and
it's pretty bad. I mean, that's not a good look. Even though you made the Final Four last year, that you should play each season on a fresh slate. And to me, it feels like the committee is definitely seeing them for the talent they displayed last year. And I don't think that's fair because, even though they may return the same players as last year, this isn't last year. It's this season, and frankly, they got an 8 seed. I don't necessarily think they deserve it, but they take on Northwestern in the first round. Who do you have in that one?
This is, what I think about Florida Atlantic, is that I think this is a good matchup for them, but Northwestern plays really hard. They're very well coached, and all the swelling rumors about whether Dusty May is going to go to a high major program like to Louisville or someone like that, I think that might be a little much, and I think I'm going to take the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm also going to rock with Northwestern here. Maybe it's just from a place of hatred. I don't quite know. I think Northwestern's got some real talent. They played Purdue close every year, and that's a good kind of testament to their team. And they did all right in the Big Ten this year. They were, the 4 seed in the tournament. That's pretty respectable. I think they'll get it done over FAU, but I think it's going to be a close game because FAU is a solid team. I just don't think they deserve the seeding they got. So I'll take Northwestern in the first round. Moving on, we've got San Diego State, the national champion runner-up of last year, versus the American Conference champions, UAB.
UAB is a team that's playing really hot. They won a good conference in the American. They have a history of pulling off upsets in March, but that San Diego State defense is nothing to play with. And when they can mix that in with hitting their jumpers consistently, then they're a team that, much like a year ago, can go on a deep run. And I'm not so sure how I feel about them going on a run per se, but I do think they're going to take care of business against UAB.
I completely agree. I think they play really a frustrating brand of basketball, and come March, that's one of the best things you can do. So I think the Aztecs get it done. Moving on to the 4th-seeded Auburn taking on the 13th-seeded Yale Bulldogs. Got a bit of a game winner today to win the Ivy League tourney, get in at the last possible second. Who you got in this one?
Well, Yale was playing with fire down double digits to 14-17 Brown today in the Ivy League championship. And, Yale, another team like UAB with a history of pulling upsets in March, but this Auburn team is a brutal matchup for them. Auburn, they're just so powerful and talented and athletic. And I think that this is a team that, I think that if there is an SEC team that can go on a run, I think it's Auburn. And I'm kind of shocked that they were only a 4, the SEC champions. But I'm rocking with the Auburn Tigers.
I absolutely agree with you. I think Auburn might be the best team in the SEC. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but some of these teams don't necessarily move me in the postseason, especially with their performances in the SEC tournament. Auburn looks good, and they might take it all the way to the UConn game. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to each Elite 8 contender, and then we'll show you the Final 4 in the East, and then we'll go region by region. So going back to UConn versus Northwestern, for both of us, we have the same pick so far, mine synced. Who you got in that one in Brooklyn?
Northwestern, it's a fun story, but, maybe the worst place in the world is to be an 8 and 9 seed, especially when you're taking on UConn. I think the Huskies will get it done, especially in their backyard in Brooklyn. Yeah,
I agree. I think, right now, UConn might be the team to beat in the country. They're the number 1 overall seed, is, of course, a 1 seed in this. And they look pretty freaking good. Moving out back to Spokane, San Diego State and Auburn for both of us. For me, I'm going to take the Tigers in this one. They are one of my favorite teams, I think, in this little region, and it's going to be Auburn moving on.
I completely agree. I like the San Diego State team, but I think Auburn is just, this is a great year for them, and I think that it's going to set up a very nice Sweet 16 matchup with UConn.
Yeah, me and JP completely are doing this on the fly, so don't have a lot of, I haven't had much time to think about it, considering it came out, 2.5 hours ago. UConn and Auburn we both have in the Sweet 16 for a trip to the Elite 8. Who do you have in this one?
I think this is going to be an all-time classic game. You got Johnny Broome and Auburn going up against, the star-studded defending national champions, but if I've learned one thing this season, I'm never betting against Danny Hurley and the Huskies. Ooh, that voice crack was awesome, but I'm taking UConn to move on to the Elite 8.
And part of me wants to pick Auburn really bad just because These kind of has shades of that 2019 team that went on a run all the way to, was it the title game?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
oh, no, the Final Four.
They lost to Virginia, right? Interesting set of events in that one, did Ty Jerome double dribble?
Yes.
Streets say yes. I'm also going to take UConn, though. I think betting against them is, as you put, it's a thing that I'm just not going to do. So right now, while we're talking, I'll put up a picture of each of our brackets so you can see what we did so far to follow along. We're going to move to the bottom half of the East, starting with BYU and Duquesne.
This was another interesting seeding for me. I'm really kind of shocked Duquesne got an 11. They were an upset victory in the Atlantic 10
A-10,
Conference.
Yep.
And I'm a big A-10 fan, so I've watched this team a lot, and I do think that they have a shot at pulling this upset. But BYU is a team that lives and dies from their jump shots, and when they're hitting them, they can beat anybody in the country, and I think they'll hit enough to be able to defeat Duquesne. But Duquesne had a great story, making the dance for the first time since 1977 on the back of their head coach. He's in his final year there before retiring. So just what a great season by them.
Yeah, I'm also going to take BYU here, moving on out in Omaha. Our next matchup is going to be the 3-seeded Illinois taking on Morehead State. For me, this one's pretty simple. The Illini look really good in the Big Ten tournament, and they're the hottest team in that conference right now. I think they're a really scary team to play, and I think further on in the bracket, I think they're going to be a tough matchup for a team like Iowa State. And maybe a tough matchup for UConn if we get there. You also taking the Illini?
I am. Morehead State, great season, but Illinois is just too much to contend with right
here.
Now. Yeah.
Moving on, it's Washington State versus Drake.
This might be the best game in the entire tournament, Spencer.
Well, I don't know about all that.
Maybe in the first round, but man, Tucker DeVries and this Drake team that defeated Indiana State in that Missouri Valley Conference Championship game a week ago, going up against Washington State in the dance for the first time since 2008. This is just what a matchup of teams in this first round.
It's a really good matchup. I'm going to take Drake. I think this is one of the first upsets I'm putting down, but I'm going to take the Bulldogs here just because, I'm feeling it. They have a lot of tournament experience. They've been there a couple times under the head coach, DeVries. But it looks like you wrote down Wazoo. Our first disagreement of the day.
I took Wazoo just because I think that this is a team that it's kind of a team of destiny. It's the final year of the Pac-12, and them, along with Oregon State, got left behind by the greedy TV market and university presidents. And so, I think that much like how Oregon State kind of had a great season in football, I think Wazoo's going to go on a nice little run here in the dance.
Yep, our final game of the bracket is going to be Iowa State, South Dakota State. For me, I'm going to take the Cyclones here. They laid the smackdown. This has been a word of contention for me throughout this season 3 of Ball Don't Lie. Smackdown on Houston, and knocked Houston out of the number 1 overall seed, I do believe, because a 28-point loss is not something you want to have the game right before the tournament. And the Cyclones looked on fire when they gave it to them.
Yeah, and I'm also going to take Iowa State. I just don't think there's much really to say as South Dakota State, they have had a history of playing well in the dance, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I've got bunnies on my tie, so it's, do I go with the Jackrabbits? Unfortunately not. Maybe if they got a more favorable matchup, I would think about it a little more. But Iowa State, the best 2 seed in, the whole thing. They were the closest to, unseating UNC for the final 1 seed. Didn't happen, but staying here in Omaha, it's going to be BYU taking on Illinois. Who you got?
I think this could be a really tough game. In my heart of hearts, I think Illinois is the better team, and I think that they, should win this. But I'm going to go with BYU. I think BYU will pull off the upset behind some hot shooting, much like the old Jimmer Fredette teams.
That would be a lot of fun. I mean, I remember, the Jimmer Fredette highlight tape is just absurd. But I'm going to go with the Illini. I think they get it done, and I think they're one of the best teams in this bracket. Drake, Iowa State for me, and it's going to be Wazoo, Iowa State for you. Who do you have moving on in that one?
Man, ever since I wrote down Wazoo to the round of 32, I've been trying to convince myself not to pick the Cougs to make it all the way make a run to the Sweet 16. And the more I think about it, the more I want to. And the more I'm going to rock with Wazoo here. I think that
a Wazoo truther.
They just completely shocked the world against Iowa State.
The Cyclones have struggled away from home, and it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a great game, but I'm going to take the Cougs.
I have Iowa State Drake. I'm going to take Iowa State. I went to Memphis over winter break. I know it's a weird story, but Iowa State was playing in like the Liberty Bowl against Memphis and just packed out the entire stadium. If they're traveling to Memphis, I think they'll travel to Omaha. I think the Cyclones are going to have a lot of fans in attendance. I think they get it done and set up a huge matchup with Illinois. For me, in the Eastern bracket, for you, it's BYU versus Wazoo. We'll start with you. Who do you got advancing to the Elite Eight?
Wazoo is a team that I've rode here a little bit, and BYU is really reliant on shooting, and that can dry up at any time. So I think I'm going to take Wazoo, pulling off a run to the Elite Eight. Just because their defense is very good. I think Kyle Smith is a great coach, and I think that they're going to be one of the fun little Cinderellas of this March.
Yeah, I've got Iowa State moving on to the Elite Eight. I know I've got the 1 and 2 seed advancing. It's a little bit lame of me, but at least in this region, I don't see it being too upset heavy, but that's my prediction. I'm not an expert.
I'd like to apologize for coughing. The pollen is trying to just send me back to the dark ages.
It happens. We'll, of course, show our I keep wanting to say graphics. They're called brackets. I'm going to show those here, each of ours. Setting up our Elite Eight matchup, I have UConn versus Iowa State. He's got UConn, Wazoo. Who's your first Final Four team here, JP?
The Magic will run out against Dan Hurley and the Huskies. I'm not betting against UConn, at least in this region. It's a very tough region. It's a very good region. You could convince me at any point that there could be someone else stepping into this spot, but I'm going to take the Huskies right now.
Yeah, they've been the pillar of consistency throughout this season so far, one of the 4 teams in the nation with over 30 wins, sitting at 31-3. It's pretty absurd. I think they handle business against Iowa State, and I think they advance to the Final Four. And
I don't think it's close. No matter who else gets to the Elite Eight against them, I think if UConn's there, they blow them out. If it's Iowa State, I still think that they'd really kind of hammer them, because if this UConn machine gets rolling, it's not going to stop.
Yeah, and I think it might be up to a team like Auburn to get UConn kind of on the back foot a little bit earlier in the tournament. That might be kind of the upset watch for me. Other than that, I think UConn rolls to the Final Four. Now we're going to move on to the west side of the brackets. Of course, we'll show you our finished Final Fours, but for right now, you know that UConn's going to be there. It's UNC versus Howard for me, UNC versus Wagner for you.
I'm just going to Sharpie in the Tar Heels.
It's going to be the Heels moving on in Charlotte. Knock on wood, barring a miracle, that would drive me absurd if they lost to a 16 seed. But after their performance, pretty much at home. After their performance, yesterday? I don't know what to believe in anymore. Mississippi State, Michigan State, the battle of 2 teams that I don't think should be there. Who do you have?
Well, I wrote down here on my bracket MSU because I'm funny like that.
Oh, you clever guy.
But I think Mississippi State will win. They're hotter. They have the better star power in Josh Hubbard. I think they're the more deserving of the two, albeit I don't think either of them are particularly deserving. But I'm going to ride with Klanga, I think.
Yeah, I'm also going to take Mississippi State. They did show pretty good flashes in the SEC tournament, I would say. In Michigan State, they just doesn't look like they've got it this year. I could be wrong, and Tom Izzo's a heck of a coach, but yeah, that's what I've got. St. Mary's taking on Grand Canyon out in Spokane. What you got?
I'm a big St. Mary's fan. Anyone who's watched this show this semester knows that. I'm totally going to get burned by the Gales going on a run. But I truly believe it. I think this is the best team they've had here in a long time. They've had some really great squads. They took 2 out of 3 from Gonzaga, including winning the West Coast Conference title over the Bulldogs. And I really, truly believe that this team can make a run, and I'm going to pick them over Grand Canyon. Although this is a tough first-round matchup, 2 very different teams in terms of style and philosophy, 2 great coached teams. I think it's a tragedy that we have 2 mid-majors playing each other in the first round like this, but, c'est la vie. I'm picking the Gales.
I don't know what that means, but I'm also going to take the Gales. They've been an impressive team all throughout the year, winning the West Coast Conference title, taking down Gonzaga in the title game. They look good. Grand Canyon is a really, really good team, so I think this is actually going to be a fantastic game. I'm going to go with the Gales just because I feel like that's a little bit of a safer pick. Moving on to the final game, at least in the top half of the Western bracket, it's Alabama versus Charleston. And for me, go Cougs.
I think
South Carolina unite. We're back in the Cougs. Alabama doesn't believe in defense. Charleston,
in the 6.
They know how they shoot.
In the 6. I believe in the Charleston Cougars. I'm taking Pat Kelsey and company.
Go Cougs.
Alabama just is the best theoretical basketball team you've ever heard of, but the results don't tend to stack up, especially in March. So I'm taking Charleston to get a huge upset win.
Sticking in the top half of the bracket in the round of 32, UNC versus Mississippi State. I've got the Heels to the Sweet 16, and it looks like you do as well.
I think they'll just overwhelm them. There's too much talent and scoring ability on this team. I think R.J. Davis was just built for this moment. Josh Hubbard, I think it'll be a good game for about a half, but UNC will pull away.
Yeah, I think Hubbard will probably have to do a lot of heavy lifting for this team. I think he's going to look pretty cool doing it. I'm not going to lie. He's going to put on a bit of a show, but one-man armies don't tend to hang around too long in March. UNC moves on for me. Gales versus the Cougars out in Spokane. I mean, there's a team I want to pick here.
Yeah, there is. I like both these teams a lot, but like I said, I'm going to get burned picking the Gales, and I'm going to pick them into the Sweet 16 for just the third time in program history. Give me the Gales pulling off the win against Charleston in a game that I think will be close, though, if it happens.
It's tough because I want to take the Cougs, but I think the Gales they're too good of a defensive team. I've got them moving on to the Sweet 16 against the Heels. So we have the same Sweet 16. I've got UNC to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I think the magic does run out there a little bit. St. Mary's just isn't big enough to handle Armando Bacot and Harrison Ingram down low. And they just don't have, like, their defense is tremendous, and I love watching them play. But I just don't know if there's someone you can really stick on R.J. Davis and say, hey, get a stop here, without giving it up. If you double team Davis, he's going to get it down low to Armando Bacot or Ingram, and there's not really anyone on the low block to defend him. And then if he can swing it out to Cormac Ryan beyond the arc, it's just there's too much scoring depth, I think, for North Carolina.
Yeah, UNC is going to have to improve defensively, at least how they played against NC State yesterday. Show a little bit more aggressiveness. Play like you want to win. I mean, you could have kept one of your arch rivals out of the NCAA tournament, maybe allowing the beloved Seton Hall Pirates to get in if they didn't, just kind of let NC State play their brand of basketball. And, it frustrated me to no end. But I think they get right in March. Hubert Davis is a great coach, and I think he'll figure it out. So we'll, of course, show our brackets here as the Heels move on to the Elite Eight. For both of us, we have the exact same picks here.
Surely this will go well.
Oh, surely. I mean,
think we'll start to diverge starting
we
with this
together,
6.
my friend.
I think we'll start to diverge here a little bit with this 6 versus 11, though.
You might be onto something in the bottom half of the West. It's Clemson taking on New Mexico and Memphis. Who do you have, JP?
I think New Mexico is a team. They're my favorite team to watch in the Mountain West, but this is just the worst matchup possible for the Lobos. They don't have the size down low to bang with P.J. Hall and Ian Shefflin and guys like Chauncey Wiggins and R.J. Godfrey coming off the bench. And then Jack Clark is the best defender, I think, or the most underrated defender in college basketball. He can shut it down on the wing, which is really where guys like Jamal Mashburn Jr. like to get and do their damage. If you can keep New Mexico's guards on the perimeter, it's just going to be wraps for their offense, and I think P.J. Hall will have a big day and Clemson will move on. I'm really kind of shocked that the committee gave Clemson their flowers with a 6 seed, though. Props to the committee for doing that. I thought this Clemson team had a great season.
Yeah, 21-11 and a 6 seed is a little interesting to me. I think a 7 would have been just fine, especially because I know they have better metrics than a team like South Carolina, who also got a 6 seed. I mean, a 5-win difference doesn't, to me, it doesn't sit that well, but I'm not going to complain that much. They were a tournament team no matter what. And I have them winning in the first round as well. I think, being able to stretch the floor with P.J. Hall is very valuable in March. And I think it's going to be tough for New Mexico to answer him, one of the best players in the ACC all year. Moving on, Baylor, Colgate. Baylor moves on, I think.
But I wouldn't be shocked if it's close. I would not be shocked if you're tuning into this one late and thinking, oh, man, Colgate, can they pull off the upset?
You get an upset alert like notification on ESPN. It's like, tune in to watch the last 2 minutes. And Baylor hits a clutch 3. Colgate can't handle it.
Watch for a questionable foul. I'm calling my shot there.
Ooh, Big 12 officiating crew. We're going to say the word officiating right this time. But the Bears move on, maybe. God, working on my English skills. Dayton, Nevada, out in Salt Lake City. I've got Dayton moving on here. You've got Nevada, though. Tell me about it.
I'm going to take Nevada. I'm shocked that they were this low. They were the 2nd seed in the Mountain West Conference tournament.
Which has 6 teams in the tournament, by the way. Big showing from them.
Yeah, and they were great all year long. And them being a 10 seed is really kind of surprising to me. And Dayton ended the year on a brutal cold streak, including being one of many number one seeds to lose in their conference tournaments. And it's just, I think, a tough end, coupled with the fact that Nevada, I think, is very good and very talented. It's just going to be a big win for Nevada, although I wouldn't be shocked if it's a very fun game.
I'm going to pick Dayton. I don't honestly have a ton going into that. Just feel like picking Dayton, maybe for the COVID Obi Toppin revenge story. We've got Arizona versus Long Beach State. Long Beach State, of course, with one of the most interesting storylines in the whole tournament. They agreed to part ways with their head coach before the conference tournament, then proceeded to win it with their coach still being allowed to coach. Super weird. I think Arizona just knocks them off pretty easily.
Yeah, Caleb Love, we saw what he can do in the NCAA tournament. So,
if he gets hot, it's tough for any team that faces the Wildcats.
I agree completely.
So we both have Clemson and Baylor at the top half. I've got Baylor moving on to the Sweet 16, but it feels like my co-host has something else written down.
I'm taking Clemson. I think that they'll be able to exploit Baylor's defensive issues, which has plagued them at times during conference play and during the non-conference as well. Joe Girard, I think, is a player who was built for the tournament stage in March, and I think Clemson goes on a nice little run here.
I think Joe Girard, he's got to be built for March if this team wants any sort of run.
Exactly.
He's, the main shooter on this team, or the designated, spot-up shooting type.
They run a lot of plays for him. They do a lot. He does a lot for them on defense as well.
Yeah.
Getting him to buy in, especially going from running Syracuse's funny zone to playing how Clemson does. I think he's had a great transition. But yeah, they're going to need him, and I think they'll get him at least through the Sweet 16.
I'm going to go with Baylor. I think Baylor's one of the better Big 12 teams. I just think they get it done. Jacoby Walter has been an excellent player for this team all year long, one of the best in the Big 12. Moving on, I have Dayton versus Arizona. You have Nevada versus Arizona, but I think we both have the Wildcats moving on.
I think Nevada puts up a good fight, but Arizona is just kind of, I think they'll bounce back from a disappointing Pac-12 tournament and go on, like I said, a nice little run here.
I agree. So I have Baylor, Arizona. You have Clemson, Arizona. JP.
I think Clemson puts up a really good fight, but this might just be where the magic runs out. It'll be, an excellent year for Brad Burnell and company. But I think for one last time, Caleb Love gets the better of the Tigers.
And I think this might set up for one of the coolest storylines in the entire tournament.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was kind of like penciling this in just because I want UNC versus Caleb Love.
Like, that would be pretty awesome. And, it doesn't always happen, but I feel like both parties have benefited from him transferring.
Yeah.
It's allowed R.J. Davis to flourish. Caleb Love, both of them have won their conference player of the years. So I think pretty easily you can say it's worked out for both of them. I know there's no love lost, as Caleb Love is still a UNC legend. Of course, we'll put up our brackets now. But who do you have moving on to the Final Four between UNC and Arizona?
The last time North Carolina lost before the ACC title game, they really kind of regrouped and, they talked and they went on a crazy run, playing very well and dominating very good teams. And I think they'll do the same thing after losing to their hated rival in the ACC title game. And I think that this propels UNC to a Final Four.
I'm also going to pick UNC. I swear, it's not biased. I think this team is really good. They do a lot of things well. I think they are going to have to, show who they really are. I think Arizona and Caleb Love is going to be a really tough matchup. But one of the best defending tandem of guards, Seth Trimble coming off the bench has been a lockdown defender, and when he was hurt, UNC suffered greatly. So having him in that rotation, along with Elliot Cadeau, has about everything but a three-point shot. He hasn't been able to find that in his freshman year, but other than that, he's been a great facilitator and defender. And I think they're going to find a way to at least stifle Caleb Love just enough for R.J. Davis and Baycott to lead this team to a Final Four. So we've got half our bracket done here. We're going to move to the South region. And started off with Houston versus Longwood. We don't even need to talk about it.
No, Houston. And, honestly, do we even need to talk about Nebraska, Texas A&M? I don't even want to waste oxygen on the Aggies.
No, they shouldn't be here in the first place.
I lied, though. This is a very funny storyline. There's a really good storyline here. Texas A&M hired Nebraska's athletic director away from them the other week. So I just find that to be very
quite
interesting.
good.
But I'm going to take Nebraska.
I think Nebraska is one of those sneaky teams. I mean, we'll get to it, but they could give Houston a run for their money. They can shoot the lights out of the ball, and if they're playing good, I mean, we saw Houston have one bad game and get 30-pieced by Iowa State. I'm not going to say I couldn't see it happening again, but Wisconsin, James Madison, the next matchup out in Brooklyn.
This is going to be the most picked 12/5 maybe in human history.
Yep, and for good reason. Give me the Dukes.
And for that reason, I'm going to pick Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be different.
I think that I think that Wisconsin's playing very well right now after they really struggled in February. James Madison, they struggled with the physicality and the defense that App State had in the Sun Belt, and I think that'll cost them here.
It sure could, but I mean, this team has a really just a knack for shooting the ball. I think they get it done against Wisconsin, but I do think this is going to be a really, really good game. Moving on to the 4 versus 13 matchup, it's Duke versus Vermont. Duke, a team I think should have been seeded a little higher, maybe a 3 seed would have been, nice for them. Like you see a team like Baylor, 23-10, getting a 3 seed, but a 24-8 Duke team gets a 4 seed, and
for that reason, I'm going to take Duke. I think they'll beat Vermont. A very popular upset pick I've seen so far, but I don't think people watched Vermont struggle in the American East Conference tournament.
And I think a lot of people are used to seeing Vermont in the tournament and being like, wow, these are a bunch of tall white guys that can shoot threes. I mean, that's been Duke's brand forever. They're going against – Duke is just the best version of Vermont ever. I mean, you remember those early 2010s Duke teams with their now head coach John Shire, Kyle Singler. There's always a lanky white boy for Duke who can stretch the floor. And they've got one now, Filipowski. He might trip you while he's at it, but he's got a good jumper on him. Houston versus Nebraska. Do you smell a little something?
Oh, I think I smell what The Rock is cooking. And speaking of The Rock, I think that Nebraska, we've seen them get hot from 3 and just completely wash away a great team. We saw them do it to Purdue. And Purdue has offensive capabilities that Houston just doesn't. Houston is very injured. I love them. I think they're a great team, but they're very prone to no-shows in the tournament, especially with their offense. And it doesn't matter how good your defense is if you can't score and they're going up against a great offensive team. Nebraska is a very regimental, very, very fundamental, fun-to-watch offense. They get good looks, and they make them. That's why I'm picking the Huskers.
I alley-ooped the upset pick for you, but I'm going to take Houston in this one. But I think if this matchup happens, I think it's going to be one to definitely keep your eye on. Moving on to James Madison versus Duke for me, Wisconsin Duke for you. Who you got moving on? Do we both have Duke moving on?
I'm going to pick Duke. I think the Blue Devils just have an extra edge against Wisconsin. I think it'll be a great game, a rematch of the 2015 national title, Frank Kaminsky against Jalil Okafor. And while it won't be as great a game as that was, I think it'll be a good one, but I think Duke moves on to face the Cornhuskers in my reality.
And in mine, they're going to face Houston. I've got Duke going to the Elite Eight, and I
agree.
I think this team, they've had some questionable regular season losses, going out to NC State in the tournament. However, State is one of the hottest teams in basketball right now. But I've got Duke going to the Elite Eight. I think it's just a classic Houston blunder in the tournament.
Yeah.
I hate to say it because, at some point you kind of want them to win, or do you? I don't know. I'm taking Duke to the Elite Eight. Who do you got?
I got Duke. I think that'll be a good game, but Nebraska's shooting will start to dry up in the second half, and I think Duke will take care of business.
We'll pop up the brackets here. We'll move on to the bottom half of the bracket. Texas Tech versus NC State. It's a 6 versus 11 matchup. I just know what JP's going to pick.
Go State!
Texas Tech wins. Moving on, at least in my eyes, I sure hope so. No offense to NC State, but I mean, go Red Raiders here. Kentucky versus Oakland. I've got Kentucky moving on.
I do too. I'm a big fan of this Kentucky team, man. I think they're going to respond to their loss in the SEC tournament, and I think that they are well poised to go on a run. They're very deep. They're fun to watch, but they could just as easily go out round 1 because of their defense.
And that's exactly, this team is the definition of volatile. I got them they might go to the Final Four. Oakland could beat them by 12. And I feel like there's really no in between. Florida taking on, we both had Colorado. Is that correct?
Yes, I did have the Buffs, and
Florida is a team that I'm very high on. As we saw on last Friday, I picked the Gators to win the SEC tournament, but tragedy struck today. Micah Hanlogton suffered a brutal injury.
Fractured leg. It's
in the SEC championship game, and he's such a huge part of their success. I really like this Florida team, the way they can bang down low. I think they'll beat Colorado. It'll be a very good game. This is the closest decision I've had to make so far, I think, at least amongst first-round games. But I think that Florida will win, but it could certainly go the other way.
I'm going to take Colorado. I think they get hot in the tournament after knocking out Boise State. Moving on to our final matchup in the South region, it's going to be Marquette versus Western Kentucky. I think we both got Marquette.
But Western Kentucky is a really hot team, and Marquette, Tyler Kolek, we'll see if he can come back. With him, they're just as good as anyone else in the country, but without him, it could certainly fall victim to an upset.
Okay, so you have NC State and Kentucky. I have Texas Tech and Kentucky. I've got Kentucky moving on. You?
One of the worst defenses amongst the high majors in the tournament, dealing with DJ Burns down low and the athleticism and talent scoring-wise of NC State's guards. I think I'm going to pick NC State to continue this miraculous run into the Sweet 16. I think they're just too good, at least right now.
He's a mad lad. I'd be disowned for saying that, so I just can't. I hope you understand. Their ACC tournament run, it was fun to watch, even though they, capped it off against my boyhood love. Very sad. I've got, is it Colorado? You have Florida Marquette. I have Colorado Marquette.
Colorado, I think Colorado could definitely, it's very hinging on Tyler Kolek being healthy. I'm making my picks in the mindset that Tyler Kolek is going to be ready to play for the NCAA tournament. Or at least ready to play by the round of 32. And for that reason, I'm taking the Golden Eagles of Marquette.
So you have NC State and Marquette. JP, break it down for us. Sweet 16 matchup.
Can NC State continue the magic?
Does the magic die?
Sadly, I think that it comes to an end in the Sweet 16 against Marquette. Marquette is very physical. The way they play defense is very good. And NC State's offense, very iso ball heavy, and Marquette has some of the best point of attack defenders in college basketball, and I'm going to take the Golden Eagles to move on to the Elite Eight.
I've got Kentucky taking down Marquette. I think March Madness favors Kentucky because I think they don't have to worry about rest as much. You're leaving it on the floor. I think we're going to see Rob Dillingham get a lot of minutes, one of the best freshmen in the entire country. He's an electric scorer. Him and just the consistency of Antonio Reeves all year long, I think they get it done against a Marquette team that, they are really good, but sometimes they have a little bit of trouble showing up. And I think Kentucky's going to make a stand. We're going to, of course, pop up our brackets here as we have our third Elite Eight matchup of the day. It's Duke versus Kentucky for me. It's Duke versus Marquette for you. I'm
going to take the Golden Eagles of Marquette over Duke. I think this is a great game. It's two of the more evil programs in my eyes in college basketball. But I think Marquette will win on to the Final Four.
And, either way, I cut the cake here. It's going to be a blue blood advancing to the Final Four. I didn't have any intentions behind this, but Duke versus Kentucky. Oof. It's tough.
It is.
Who would you pick in my shoes, just to give me a second?
I think I would pick Duke because I just hate Kentucky's defense that much, but I think you can very well pick Kentucky and get away with it. They have a great scoring depth, and if Filipowski gets in foul trouble, they can get to the rim easily.
I'm gonna take Duke. I think that's good advice, but also I think Tyrese Proctor is one of the best guard defenders. He's lanky. I think he could prove problematic for those Kentucky guards. That get them all the way to the Elite Eight, but I've got Duke in the Final Four. Half my family's going to love hearing this. The other half is going to hate me. We're moving on to our very last bracket. It's the Midwest. It's Purdue versus Grambling for each of us. Purdue wins this one, I do believe. If they lose to a 16 seed 2 years in a row, do
we just ban them from the
I was going to say, do we
point?
have to fire Matt Painter? Does the NCAA step in and say you're not allowed to do this anymore?
Yeah, I don't know. But the 8 and 9 is a lot more interesting, I think.
It sure is. Utah State, TCU. Do we both have the Aggies moving on?
I do. I just TCU.
I like this team a lot, though. Even though TCU is a team I don't think should have been in the tournament, or at least should have been a little closer on the edge. I think Utah State is a very good team.
I'm shocked they were an 8 seed. They won the Mount West regular season title.
But I think they get the win here against TCU.
I agree. Moving on to Gonzaga versus McNeese, one of the other teams with 30 wins on the year. This is going to be another very popular 12-5 seed upset. I'm going with the Zags.
I'm going to go with the Zags too. I think that they're just playing very well right now, and we've seen what they can do when they get in the tournament, and they don't really have the expectations that a normal Gonzaga team has. They can play loose. They're getting a team like McNeese, who's going to be kind of a trendy upset pick, and they can kind of go out there and play their basketball. I think they're good. It's just going to be too much for McNeese to defend.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. I'm also going with Gonzaga. Kansas versus Samford. And this one is tough because Kansas has looked just abysmal as of late. I see JP writing down Samford. I'm inclined.
It ain't Stanford, but I'm taking.
Correct.
I'm taking Samford over the Jayhawks.
They the Bulldogs?
They are.
Yeah.
This Kansas team just moves me none at all. So I'm taking Samford.
Yeah, I think especially coming off injuries to Kevin McCullough and Hunter Dickinson, I think Samford goes in against a weaker Kansas team and knocks them out. Somehow Kansas got a 4 seed too. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah,
very interesting. Purdue, Utah State. I think we've both got the Boilermakers moving on here. The refs do enjoy Zach Edey foul calls.
They do, but this Purdue team, it's
They
a lot
are better.
deeper than a year ago.
Yeah.
They have better guard play. They shoot the ball very well beyond the arc. So I think this Purdue team is I'm not going to say that they'll do what Virginia did and bounce back from losing to a 16 seed to win the national title, but I do think that it's a good run so far for them.
Zags, Samford, who you got?
I'm taking Gonzaga.
Me as well.
Samford just cannot compete with the length of Gonzaga and also the ability to stretch the floor.
Yeah, they stretch the floor really well while maintaining height while at the same time as doing it. But also physicality, I think, is going to play a huge factor here. So I've got the Zags moving on. Purdue versus Gonzaga. I've got Gonzaga going to the Elite Eight. I don't trust Purdue.
I'm going to take Purdue. I think that Zach Edey is just going to have kind of his quintessential March moment against the Zags and get a big performance to push them to the Elite Eight.
And, I'm a big Zach Edey fan. I think he gets a lot of hate. He can't help what the officials call, but he's a really nice guy. You always see him signing autographs and stuff, but it doesn't matter how nice you are. There are a lot of bad guys that win basketball games. The Zags move on to the Elite Eight. We'll pop up our brackets real lickety-split here and move on to the bottom half of the Midwest region. And starting off, it's going to be a fan favorite. South Carolina, the 6th seed, taking on the Oregon Ducks. JP, are we obligated to take the Gamecocks here?
I think
do we
are,
have to?
Jermaine Couisnard, revenge game. This is an Oregon
for South
team.
Carolina, not for Jermaine Couisnard.
It's Oregon's playing very well right now. Dana Altman has the Ducks back in the tournament for the first time in a couple years. They have Infali Dante, who struggled.
Hasn't missed a shot in some time.
Yeah, he struggled with injuries
Goodness.
early in his college career, but now he's back on track to be the 5-star we kind of knew him as. And it's a fun team, but the Gamecocks, I believe in the Gamecocks, at least in the round of 64.
Yeah, Dante is going to be the huge question mark for the Gamecocks. How they deal with that absolute monster on the interior is going to be tough because they are undersized at that big man position, but I think it's going to be a lot of clever defense from South Carolina. They might even go to that zone we've seen them do before, just because I don't think Oregon has the talent outside of Couisnard and Dante.
The depth falls off a lot there in
sure
terms
does.
of being able to shoot the ball. So I think that South Carolina will do it well.
I think so as well. Moving on, it's the 3-seeded Creighton taking on Akron, who beat Kent State in a heartbreaker for the Golden Flashes?
Yeah.
I mean, just they fouled up one for no reason. Akron won on free throws. And for that reason, we're taking Creighton justice for Kent State.
I don't think we need to talk about that much.
Creighton
We can
just
move on
wins.
to one of the more interesting 7 seeds.
Yeah, I've got Colorado State. You have Virginia. But either way, they're taking on the Longhorns of Texas.
And I think UVA is going to do it.
I'm taking my 10 seed as well. I'm taking the Colorado State Rams.
Texas is just not real.
I couldn't agree more. Tennessee versus St. Peter's. The Peacocks are back. I'm taking Tennessee, though.
I want to pick it so bad, but
because that would be the funniest thing ever.
we have to wait for
hilarious.
the Rick Barnes March Masterclass for at least one more round.
And it's South Carolina versus Creighton here in the round of 32. As much as I want our beloved Gamecocks to move on,
It's a terrible
it's
matchup
very
for
tough.
South Carolina. Baylor Shireman, or Ryan Kalkbrenner down low. My God, that front court is just.
And if they get past Oregon, you're getting like 1 day's rest and then having to play that guy. I mean, B.J. Mack, Colin Murray Boyles, and Josh Gray are just going to be huffing and puffing. It's going to be tough. I think Creighton's just too good. Moving on, you've got
Virginia,
UVA and Tennessee. I've got Colorado State and Tennessee. I think Tennessee does make it to the Sweet 16.
I don't think so, man.
UVA.
It goes as Dalton Connect can take them, and he's not going to have very many opportunities to take them far with how Virginia limits the game. And, Reese Beekman is going to be defending him like his life depends on it, and I think he'll do it well. I think UVA takes it to the Sweet 16.
Extremely interesting. Creighton and Tennessee for me, Creighton and UVA for you. I've got Creighton advancing here.
I also have Creighton. I believe the Blue Jays. They made it to the Final Four a year ago, and
The Final Four?
no, did they not? Well, they got shafted in the Elite Eight. I remember it now. It was a really bad call.
I can't remember who they lost to. But
San Diego State.
Bingo.
So now we'll move on to, you have Gonzaga and Creighton. I have Purdue and Creighton in the Elite Eight.
Of course, we'll pop up our brackets here.
Yes.
Halfway through.
I'm going with the Big C. A lot of people before the year picked Creighton as a Final Four contender. They struggled a little bit out of the gate, but they've really turned it on now. I'm a believer in the Blue Jays.
We told you guys there was just nothing planned here. I got the Zags going to the Final Four, having a bit of fun. Mark Few, this team, they've gotten real hot as of late. People wrote them off. I think it's a good thing to point out. A team without expectation, it's a dangerous team.
That's a really good take. I think Gonzaga could do it. This is the glory of March Madness. Anything is possible.
I could get every single game wrong, and it'd probably be a pretty fun time watching. And that's really all that matters. Because who cares if we're right or wrong? No one's ever gotten a perfect bracket. I highly doubt we'll start today. But moving on to our Final Four. I've got UConn, UNC.
I also have UConn, UNC.
And I've got Duke and Gonzaga, and you have
Marquette and Creighton. And so it's UConn, UNC. I just think
a really good game.
I just think UConn has that championship DNA, the ability to just dig deep. Not that UNC really doesn't. I think it's a great game. But I think
UConn's too stacked. I'm also taking the Huskies.
UConn is just too stacked, man.
I think if UNC were to win, first off, if they were to make it this far, if they were to win this game, it would have to be like an R.J. Davis, Kemba Walker performance.
Yeah.
Like he would be a legend after this game. It would take something crazy to knock off UConn. I think they're too deep for North Carolina. I think Donovan Clingan on the inside. It would be a tough matchup for Baycott. And I've got the Huskies in the title game for the second year in a row. You've got Marquette Creighton in your second semifinals. JP, break it down.
It was a hotly contested matchup the first two times they played in Big East Conference play. And if, like I said, Tyler Kolek is healthy, I think that gives Marquette the edge. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Baylor Shireman. This is such a coin flip, but I'm just going to go with my gut. I'm going to pick Marquette. So a third matchup between the Golden Eagles, I think, and the Huskies in the national title game for me.
And that would be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. The Big East truther, he's sitting right here. He's got Marquette and UConn in the final. For me, it's deciding between Duke and Gonzaga.
That's tough.
And it's really tough because in a lot of ways, I think these teams are a little bit similar. Maybe haven't quite lived up to the grand expectations they both had this year. I'm gonna ask you again so it gives me a little more time to think. Who would you take, Duke or Gonzaga?
Gonzaga's ability to stretch the floor is really impressive. But Duke has been kind of forged through the fire this season. And I think that gives them a little bit extra to go to in these situations. Gonzaga might feel that a little bit in the tournament, but Duke has kind of honed it. And I think if Duke is in this position in the Final Four, I think they just have that extra bit of oomph to them to be able to get over the top, especially against a team like Gonzaga where they'll have a talent advantage.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. I'm going to go with Gonzaga because watching the Duke UNC game recently, it showed me that,
Kyle Filipowski's a coward.
well, yes, it's been proven. But I think Gonzaga finding a way to stretch the floor, the Cormac Ryan 31-point legacy game at Cameron Indoor was something to behold, but I think Gonzaga can find a way to get their own shooters open, because Duke had a hard time dealing with that. And that was in their home stadium. Out in Phoenix, it might just be Mark Few's time. This might be, I don't know how many title games he's been to, but I know he hasn't brought one home back to Spokane. I've got UConn Gonzaga in the title game. You have UConn Marquette in the battle of the Big East teams, JP.
UConn got the better of Marquette their first two meetings. Marquette was heavily injured in the second one, though. And I think it's a crazy battle. I think Shaka Smart and Tyler Kolek, Oso Ighodaro, and all them, I think Marquette wins the national championship just, from the gut.
From the gut, the Sharpie toss. Wait, give me your final score. Because if this
76-72 Marquette.
That's a game. It's so tough to pick against UConn.
It is.
Me personally, I think a Gonzaga Final Four title game legacy run, it would be awesome. Because I think Mark Few's a pretty cool guy.
He is.
I want to see him get one. I don't think he will. I think UConn goes back to back. They're too good. I think they're too stacked at almost every position. Like, they are just unbelievable. Final score, give me 81-73. UConn takes it home, and we're almost done. I know this one's run longer than we expected, but I mean,
I don't know why we thought it wouldn't take super long, but our producer Tyler Perrone filled out a bracket.
Beautiful. Look at this handwriting. It's actually.
It's a lot better
Tyler,
than
you
mine.
did pretty good. I'm a little surprised. He's not known for his handwriting, but you know what? Legibility on full display here.
Spencer has seen it. I haven't, but.
I mean, well, no, I haven't seen it either. This is the first time I'm seeing his bracket. We're going to point out, I guess we'll start with some surprises.
St. Mary's to the Final Four.
St. Mary's.
So true. So true.
He's got him taking down UNC and Arizona on their way to dying to UConn. An honorable death, Gales.
A gruesome death does await them if they end up playing UConn somehow.
The Huskies with that throwback logo of the cross-eyed dog. They await.
James Madison to the Sweet 16. I do like that. I think that's fun.
It's a lot of fun. He's also got Marquette.
He spelled Purdue like the chicken brand.
The great surprise of this one is his inability to spell. UConn versus Houston is his title game, and UConn does come out on top. So me and Tyler have the same winner. We don't go about it the same way as he has Creighton.
He does have Creighton in the Final Four, which is honorable and true.
He's got pieces of all of our brackets. We all have different things going on. And JP, I think I speak for the both of us when that's the real beauty of March Madness. I was going to say you could justify every team winning the title. You really can't.
You can justify about like 42 of them, though.
Maybe. If a Stetson glory run happens and they take down UConn in the first round, I will be the first person to say that it was the coolest thing ever. And I would love to eat a piece of paper if that happens. But I think that's going to wrap it here for us on Ball Don't Lie.
I do believe so. I think we're going to go to sleep.
We've hit our quota. I've got to edit this after. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. But, hey, it's a labor of love.
We'll be watching the NIT field get announced, unless it already has happened. I don't even know what time it is. Time moves different here in the studio. But, hey, it's been fun. Be sure to keep it locked. Check out all of our content on SGTV and SGTV at USC.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barry.
I'm Spencer Ball. Be sure to still, catch us on Friday. Okay?
Absolutely.
We're not done. We're not just retiring after the special. We've certainly got a banger cooked up for Friday as round day one will have happened already.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. Sorry, the longest outro ever. I'm bad at this. Have a good night, Carolina.
Forever to thee.